No AI was used in the making of this artwork.
Hail to the king, baby! Welcome back to another episode of Watercolor Fire Damage. I'm your host, Dan Marek, artist, and this is the show where I paint a watercolor and then I turn it into contemporary art. Today's episode, we're moving through the Heavenly Bodies collection, and we got to Jupiter, the king planet, the king of the solar system. And I thought, what better way to talk about Jupiter than to have a co-host like King Beardy here. Jupiter, it's this huge planet. It's the planet of good luck. It's the king of the solar system. Oh, what's going on? Beardy has something to say. Jupiter's this huge planet. It's a gas giant. So we're gonna be focusing on these color bands moving through it, the big red spot as well. Such a fascinating planet. A lot of the depictions of Jupiter in the past, he had a purple cloak on. So we're gonna be going with purple in the background, purple and blue. And it's gonna be a lot of fun trying to paint this one. We're focusing on the freshness this time, not overworking the painting, not killing it with details like we've done the last couple of planets. So I'm really excited to start this one. Let's get into it. So I'm just getting started with my color mix here, working with dioxazine purple and ultramarine blue. I'm mixing up these colors. Both of these pigments are transparent, so they should do really well when it comes to layering in the background. It's going to be a mix of granulating pigments and staining pigments, and I've heard that when you mix a granulating pigment and a staining pigment together, that the quality of the color that's made is more like a staining color than a granulating color, so the color shouldn't lift out as much. I'm getting the background wet. I'm doing a wet and wet wash. I'm trying to use holy water here, but as you can see, there's some tinge of blue in my brush that I didn't clear out. Now I'm lazy and I want to paint. So you can see we just taken the mixture of color that I've got and just pouring it directly into the water. I don't really have a specific idea of what I want in the background. I just want to have a mix of like some really dark areas, and I'm trying to leave the white of the paper so that we can have some variation and we can kind of see the watercolor doing its thing. Now, the first wash in watercolor is always the most fun because there's this feeling of infinite possibility, and you're in that play state when you're making as an artist. I actually really struggled with this as an artist when I first started working in watercolor, and I was feeling stuck. So I actually reached out to an old art professor that I had in college about 20 years ago. She's retired, but I met up with her, Annalie Fuentes, and I didn't know this until I saw her, but she had had a career as a graphic designer. And I'd had a career as a graphic designer working for about 20 years, doing logo work and brand identities. And when you're working as a designer, there's always this pressure of billable time and making something that the client is going to like. So I was struggling with that. I was struggling with perfectionism. I was struggling with this feeling of every hour that I sit down has to be accounted for. There has to be billable time here. And Annalie, she could relate to that because she had also been a graphic designer. And she told me, look, Dan, you've just got to get back to that state of being a child and having fun and playing with the medium and not being attached to the outcome. So that really helped, just kind of going in that direction, which is why I use watercolor. It's why I don't try to be perfect about painting. There's this feeling that everything has to be perfect when I paint, so I'm trying to lean into the opposite of that for personal growth. And as always with these space backgrounds that I've been doing, I'm grabbing a ton of Payne's gray here. I'm mixing it up. I'm grabbing a thick amount of it, but I'm diluting it with water so that it flows really well in the wet on wet wash. But I don't want it to be thinner than the consistency of what's already there. This is a technique called charging. And I was so excited when I learned about that technique because it made me think that I'm making a Kamehameha. Like I'm just going, like a Super Saiyan. Kakarot, you dog, you did it. You finally did it. You charged your watercolor pigments. And as always with these backgrounds, we don't want to kill the freshness. This time around, I'm thinking maybe I should clean my brush out and make sure it's not gonna leave a big old splotch of color when I'm working wet and wet. So I'm cleaning out my brush in holy water, and I'm pushing the bristles into the bottom of Scully. And I'm mixing it, and I'm making sure that I'm getting all the color out, and then I'm checking it with my paper towel. And sometimes you have to do this multiple times to be able to get the color out. And so you can see, even with all this cleaning that I've done with my brush, when I'm coming back in and I'm putting some of this water down, you can see that there's still a tinge of blue in it, which means I need to clean my holy water. But it's such a pain in the butt. I've got to take it, I gotta put new water into it, I boil it for 5 minutes, and then I've got to leave it outside under a full moon to get all charged up with energy, and I just don't have the time for that. So now I'm using a mix of Indian yellow and burnt sienna, and then there's gonna be touches of quinacridone rose that I'm gonna be using for like the great red spot, and there are some areas on Jupiter where the browns lean more towards this reddish color. So I'm gonna be mixing those colors up and making sure I have a couple different versions of those ready to go. And then as I'm painting with these colors, I'm going to be varying the color, like as I'm painting. So I'm gonna be grabbing some more pigment, pushing it a little bit more red, pushing it a little bit more yellow, pushing it a little bit more brown. Because that's one of the really cool things about watercolor, is that you can get these gradients of tones on the page where you can't really predict exactly how they're gonna work, but for the most part, you can get them in zones where they behave the way that you want them to. And it's one of the funnest things about watercolor, is seeing this big connected shape, but then you see all of this subtle variation within it, and you wanna be pushing things warmer and cooler, and then you want soft edges and you want hard edges as well. So Jupiter is this absolutely enormous planet. It's really interesting. Our solar system is really fascinating, that we've got all these planets, and each one is significantly different than the next, and no planet is close to each other. So we've got Jupiter here, and just the volume, just the size of the planet is hard to fathom. There was once that I was on a flight going from the west coast of America to Australia. So if you look at a globe, you can kind of see how far that is. And it was like a 20-hour flight. And we're going like hundreds of miles an hour in the air. And it's 20 hours to get from the west coast, to get from LAX down to Sydney, right? And so you kind of imagine that, you just think about how vast even our Earth is, and how many resources there are here. And then you compare our Earth to Jupiter, and about 1,300 Earths would fit inside of Jupiter. So to kind of wrap your head around that, if the Earth is about the size of a grape, Jupiter would be the size of a basketball, right? So it's just like, oh my goodness, it's so big, and it's just sitting out there in space doing its thing. It's crazy, it's crazy. And then a lot of what we know about Jupiter has significantly changed in even just the last couple of years. A lot of the stuff that I was taught going through school is wrong. It's flat out wrong now, and we know it, right? When I was a kid, we were taught Jupiter is a gas giant, and we weren't completely sure if you could fly a probe straight through the planet, whether it had a core or not. But at that time, the theory was that Jupiter had a solid core, and the gravitational well of Jupiter is so strong that you couldn't even fly a probe through the planet, because it would just be crushed under the extreme gravitational pull that Jupiter has. But there was this idea that, like, we just don't know. Maybe you could. Maybe it is all gas, right? And there was kind of this idea that Jupiter was the way that a star would be formed, but it just didn't have enough gas. It didn't have enough of these different resources and things to condense down into a star like our sun is in the solar system. So there's all of this, the theory around how gas giants are formed. And the model that scientists had for the longest time was that there was a solid core within a gas giant. And now we've sent probes over to study Jupiter, and what we know now is that It doesn't have no core, and it doesn't have a solid core. It has a fuzzy core. So now that we know that Jupiter has a fuzzy core from the satellites and probes that we've sent by it, scientists have tried to remodel how they understand how gas giants have been formed. And they've got supercomputers, and they've tried testing out all of these different models of how they think that Jupiter might have gotten its core. They think maybe another object ran into it, and then those two objects coalesced, and now we have this fuzzy core, and we can't figure it out. There's no model, as of today, filming this, there's no model that explains how gas giants are formed, which just leads me to believe that Jupiter is a strong independent planet that don't need no model. So as you can see here, I'm taking burnt sienna and quinacridone rose. I'm gonna mix those colors up, and I'm just trying to get this deep brownish red hue, and I'm gonna be going in with a smaller brush, adding a lot of hard edges. So we did all of our soft edges in a wet on wet wash on Jupiter, and now I'm coming in to kind of add some more hard edges to really accentuate those bands and zones of color on Jupiter, to kind of make that patterning that you see that's very characteristic, where all of these areas are just mixing together and flowing like kind of like how watercolor looks, right? So in the last wash I was working on, I had done that wet and wet wash on Jupiter, and then I was kind of taking advantage of that time, and I started adding another layer of color to the background while that wash was there, and I got real cocky and I got too close to the planet. I flew too close to the sun. So the water connected, and I got this big old cauliflower that showed up, and it came off my paper towel, and I thought I was gonna fix it. But there was this really hot girl that I knew was gonna be at the bookstore, and I wanted to chat her up. So I took off and then the color continued to flow, and I got this cauliflower now that I can't fix, and it's dried, so there's no way of being able to take care of it. But the more time that I sat with this painting and was viewing and looking at that, the more I kind of appreciated it. And it has a feel to it that I like. Now these bands of color on Jupiter are formed by fast-moving jet streams, and they go in different directions. They go opposite. And some of the bands are gases that are rising into the atmosphere, and then some of the areas are falling, like the gases are falling. And so that's what you see, is that play between gases rising and falling in Jupiter's atmospheres. It kind of determines the color that you're seeing there. So the lighter bands of color that you're seeing is ammonia ice particles that are rising up, and that mixture reflects the sun's light. So you see them, it's really bright. And the falling areas is ammonium hydrosulfide and other organic molecules, and that kind of makes it that's where you get that brownish red color from. So I'm getting my purple mixture going on here again. So I'm adding water, and I'm making sure I got a lot of purple to work with for this next wash. And then I'm also getting ultramarine blue and burnt sienna and mixing those together, which I'm convinced is one of the strongest blacks that you can mix together in watercolor. It's a black that's so strong, it'll slap you in the face and it'll push your mother-in-law down the stairs. And that's why I like it. Now I'm taking this mixture of the burnt sienna and the ultramarine blue, this black color, and I'm gonna start adding some dimension to Jupiter. I'm gonna start shading it on one side. Now, if you've been watching this series of heavenly bodies that I've been painting and buying the prints, you'll notice that I've been overworking these planets a lot. I've been adding too much detail to them, and I've been doing maybe one or two too many washes, right? So I'm trying to be very cognizant of that. I want to learn from the planets that I've been painting, and I'm focusing on just trying to get some dimension on this planet. I'm also thinking about the fact that burnt sienna is a granulating pigment, so it's going to be softening and lifting out when I get this area wet again. So I probably should only do one wash of this shadow on the planet, and then I'm trying to get it as dark as I can but I want to see those layers that are underneath. That's the beauty of watercolor. So I'm trying to just get this whole dimensional shading in on Jupiter, and this is like my one shot to do it. So I'm trying to make sure, trying to make it count, trying to go darker because I know it's going to dry lighter, and go more saturated than I feel is comfortable because I know it's going to get less saturated when it dries. Jupiter spins way faster than the Earth. So think about that. Like we've got Earth, which is the size of a grape in this comparison, right? And we've got a 24-hour day, right, on the Earth. And Jupiter is way bigger than the Earth, and its day is 10 hours. So it's just, whoa, like spinning like crazy going around. And it's got this intense dynamo effect. So its magnetic field is just enormous, and it projects way out beyond its own planet, like way more than ours does. So Jupiter is protected from the sun and all of the harmful radiation and particles that emit from the sun. So it's such a fascinating planet to me. And then you can see I'm just coming in with a small brush again, and I'm kind of feeling like the bands of color that I have on Jupiter are a little distracting. They're a little too detailed. And the contrast between the wet and wet wash and the hard edged wash is just, there's too much contrast there. So I'm coming back in with a brush, and I'm just trying to get that color to be closer together between the first and the second wash, and make these bands that feel more cohesive. So when painting these watercolor backgrounds, these washes, if you have an area that's dark and it's going behind something that you haven't painted yet, it's a good idea to take that color and continue it to the other side. This is something that in the design world is called Gestalt. It's a German word. Where are your papers? So the idea here is that you're taking the pieces of your design, add together from invisible lines that your mind is creating, and the sum is bigger than the parts, kind of like a barbershop quartet. And then, as always with these paintings, I'm coming in with gouache. This is the Holbein Artist's permanent white, and I'm just adding stars. I'm trying to clump the stars together to make shapes that allow your eye to kind of move through the piece and see, like, you know, you're able to kind of flow around it. It feels like you're out in space, but it's not just a diffuse, even number of dots, right? It's this feeling where you're kind of being pulled into different areas of the background, and then other areas feel more like a galaxy burst, or they're more abstract or colorful. And so I'm just trying to balance all of this and just kind of get it all feeling instinctually right. I'm trusting my artist's gut here. This painting feels like it turned out like really good. Like there's mistakes in it, I can see them, but I really like the character of this painting. I finished it, I put it up on my wall for a couple of days, and I was just like, oh man, I don't want to have to burn this, but that's the YouTube channel, baby. How would I be able to make a statement about the AI art generators burning the art world to the ground without burning my own paintings on YouTube? So, Jupiter, I loved you, but you gotta go. All right, so that's it. The King of the Planets is dead. We burned it. I really didn't want to burn this one, but that's life, baby. I've got prints of this painting available in various sizes on my website. I'm going to be putting the ashes up, although I'm kind of thinking about selling these with urns, so it might be a couple weeks before I get all of that worked out. But if you're couch locked, you should probably just watch the next video, right?